The world's richest people have grabbed nearly two-thirds of the new wealth created since 2020. This is based on a new report by UK-based charity Oxfam, which is warning of an explosion of inequity. Oxfam says the world's top 1% bagged nearly twice as much new wealth as the rest of the world over the past 2 years. The charity says billionaire fortunes are now swelling by $2.7 billion a day, and that is while many are struggling to make a living and tens of millions face hunger. Oxfam says the way forward is taxing at rates that redistribute wealth and reduce extreme inequality. The charity says a 5% tax on the rich should be enough to lift 2 billion people out of poverty. Author and commentator John Steppling is joining us right now. Mr. Steppling, regarding this Oxfam report, this is just unacceptable to see how the rich are getting richer, literally, and the poor are getting poorer. What do you think can be done? Could the taxing that has been proposed in that report be actually implemented?
Well, look, I mean, of course, it could be in an ideal world implemented, but they should be taxed at a much higher rate than is being suggested. I don't see why you can't tax people like Jeff Bezos with 98% of his wealth should be taken from him. He'd still be the richest man in the world. But we have to define this idea of ultra rich and what this inequality really means. There is 0.01% of the population, and they own 90% of the wealth of the world. There's been an enormous transference of wealth since 2008, but especially since 2016, to this top, 0.1%. There is then 9.9% of the populace that is sort of comfortable, affluent, and they are the aspirational demographic that is most visible in media, and they are kind of the army for the super rich. In a sense, they share the same values, they fight for the same status quo. And then you have an increasing proletarization of the underclass. The world is more proletarianized than ever before. And these studies, like the one from Oxfam, always wildly underestimate the poverty of the global South. I don't know if this is intentional or just a conditioned, learned blindness to the suffering of the very poor. But in the global South, conditions are are such that they're barely reported on. Maids in Singapore and other Dubai, migrant workers in those countries. Maids, if they get pregnant, are subject to criminal prosecution. They're tested monthly for these things. Migrant workers live as essentially slaves in the Gulf states. All these monarchies that are allies of the United States. But the poverty, even in countries like the UK and in other places in the EU and the United States, is dire. Look at the homelessness in the United States. Media, which is owned by that 0.1%, and this needs to be emphasized, simply doesn't report on that. I mean, I think this is the message that people have to learn regarding this inequality, is what you hear and see in media, largely, almost exclusively, is media that is owned and controlled by the interests of that 0.1%. They stay on message. There's a uniformity of message. People that are referred to as experts or fact checkers or something, they are owned as well. So the message is uniform. And people, I think, are conditioned to accept the media as a voice of authority, and they have to stop doing that. Poverty globally is almost unimaginable in some places, and the media never covers it. So the figures from Oxfam are bad enough, certainly. The lockdowns, the so-called lockdowns during COVID, triggered a retail apocalypse in the United States and parts of the EU. 1 in 3 businesses were shuttered. People lost their homes, their jobs, their livelihood. We've seen an extraordinary spike in homelessness, families living under freeways on the street. There's no safety net for these people. This 1% or 0.01% in particular should be taxed massively. Why are they not taking, what do they want that money for anyway? What is that money being used for? If it should be used to take care of the desperate and suffering globally, and certainly in their own country. It just one's mind freezes at the unfairness and sort of irrationality of this extreme wealth. Yeah. So.
I'm sorry, we're running out of time. John Steppling, author and commentator.